Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Siver, and this is the Mike Siver Show. We have a very special guest on here today. Our guest is Debra Lane White, Wright,
Right.
Debra Lane Wright, who has lived and worked in China for over 10 years, has written 7 books, 5 have been published. So we're going to get some really firsthand knowledge about what she's writing about China. So I'm going to turn it over to Debra. The name of this particular book we're reviewing, is Great Ladies in China. And she's got an interesting story about it, so I'm going to stop waffling on here and let Debra take over.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, Great Ladies in China. My motivation was telling the story of some pretty incredible ladies. I chose 16 ladies from 21 to 97 years old, so I have a big range. They're from all over China, and they all have different professions and different avenues that they're going down. There's a 72-year-old Peking opera star who performed for Mao. I have a fashion designer from Shanghai whose father was a Chinese diplomat. She lived all over the world, went to boarding schools, and then I have women who are just graduating from college. But the main thing that each one of these women has is they each have a dream. And they followed their dream despite the obstacles, despite the barriers, despite the hurdles they had to overcome. Each of them had problems, regardless of whether they came from wealth or they came from poverty, they came from education or they did not. It didn't matter. They each shared a dream, and they made their dreams come true, and they're making them come true as they move on to the future. So when I wrote this book with a vision of if one girl, if one lady, whatever, picks up this book and it gives them the inspiration to not give up and to follow their dreams, regardless of what it is, regardless of what role they play in life. They can be a wife, they can be a mother, they can be a daughter, they can be a sister, whatever it is, but they take that part of them, that they have a dream and they have a vision, and they make that dream come true. So what I did is I selected these 16 ladies, and I had them all answer 64 questions in 3 different categories. And what I did by doing that, all of them sat down. It was really interesting because some of them said, I don't have a story. I don't have you can't write my story. I don't have anything to say. But once they answered these questions, they had a lot to say.
Yeah.
And I was able to find their story, and then I was able to take that and then write about the ladies.
I guess one of the questions I have is, did these ladies know each other? Did they ever get to meet each other?
They knew me.
All right, so you're the common between all of
I'm
them.
the thread, and what I did is I selected them and I interviewed them separately because I wanted to give full attention. I always tell everyone, I didn't write this book. These ladies wrote this book. I was just the conduit. But I have to tell you, the funniest thing was when I interviewed the 72-year-old Peking opera star. She's actually quite famous in China. She's on the People's Congress in Beijing. She's a legend over there. And very famous lady, very gracious lady. And her story was amazing. And when she first sat down, I had to have an interpreter. Some of these ladies in this book, they spoke English, but some of them did not. I had to have interpreters.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sat down with the 72-year-old Peking opera star, and as she was telling her story of going through the revolution and all of these things and the communism regime, her story was very touching, but she first said, before we start, can I tell the truth? And I said, yes, please do. And then she said, I have to tell you something before we begin. I never cry. And I'm like, I don't want to. I'm not going to make you cry. Within 15 minutes, the interpreter, and myself were all in tears.
Yeah.
Because you bring back those memories, and all of these women, it was so funny because every one of them, they came from a position of wanting me to tell me what they wanted to tell me, but by asking these questions, I really was able to draw out their stories. So,
Yeah, and that's what we do a lot around here too, is
Uh-huh.
ask questions.
Yes.
And then when questions comes, the reality comes out.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
I'm glad to see you were able to get that personal part out of them.
Uh-huh. I was too.
Well, it makes it real.
Yes.
And it makes it real. And I was surprised at the question she asked, can I tell the truth?
Yes.
And I wonder if that's because of the culture over
It's
there.
the culture. Because
that you keep everything inside.
everything is about saving face,
Wow.
because, and everybody over there, one of my interpreters, we were sitting before, I had to give a speech for one of the conventions, and we were having a cup of coffee before, and she said, Deborah, she said, look at all these, you look out the window, and there's all these people, because China is a country of 1.4 billion people, so everywhere you look, you're going to see people.
Right.
And she said, every one of those people is wearing a mask. See those smiles? Not all of them are smiling inside, because in China, everything is saving face. That's why I really enjoyed doing this book, because the Chinese women have more opportunities today than they've ever had in the history of China. Here in America, I think the women enjoy a lot more freedoms, a lot more independence. We get support for getting out there and reaching our dreams.
Right.
The women in China, they have to go through a lot harder, tougher climb, and it's not, and over there, it's beginning to open, and I'm really happy to see China being more embracing their female population, but for a long time, they had foot binding, they had walking 10 steps behind the men, you never saw the women in the photos except as a supportive role.
Right.
Now they're getting more leader positions, and I'm really happy to see that. And that's why I wanted to tell this story about these different women of different ages and from different parts of the country, that they are all going after their dreams and what it took for them to do it, but they still followed their dreams. They never gave up.
Do you think after you're interviewing these women that the youngest one that you interviewed is going to have the same struggles as the older one had to achieve their goal in life?
No, I think the younger ones actually are going to benefit. They have the one-child policy, and because of that, what people don't understand is in China, everybody wanted a son. They wanted the son to carry on the family name. So these women, these younger women, one of the girls in my book, I was so shocked when she told me this. She's brilliant. I mean, she's doing great in her career, and she's following her dreams. But she said the whole time she was growing up, her mother did not want a girl. She wanted a boy. She called her boy. She actually called her boy the whole time she was growing up.
Wow.
And you get a lot of that over there. And in fact, one of my girlfriends that I met the Chamber of Commerce, she was from France, and she actually started a orphanage. I mean, she was a stockbroker, and she went through all this, and she took all of her money and she opened up an orphanage, and it's called For the Girls.
Wow.
And it's all the girls that the people didn't want, that they left on the roads, they left abandoned or whatever, because they wanted to have that one boy.
Right.
And so she has an orphanage that is full of girls.
Wow.
And she can't even hardly accommodate them. She keeps expanding and expanding. And so, I really felt this book was relevant to bring up the strength of these women, that despite all the odds, they are achieving their dreams.
So in your book, is there any change in the attitude towards women wanting only male children? Or is that a cultural thing? Is that a country thing?
Oh, well, it's a cultural thing, because again, over in China, it was always the son was the emperor.
Right.
And so, and they still call them little emperors. The boy children are called little emperors. And now, because of the one-child policy, you've got one child, set of parents, two sets of grandparents. They all dote on that one boy.
Yeah.
And they call them little emperors.
You think that policy will change?
I think gradually. I think now that they've opened it up, they've made it so that you can have more than one child, but you have to pay a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
But it's changing, and the dynamics are starting to change. But the women are starting to see themselves in different roles. They're seeing themselves not in the role of subservient. They're seeing themselves as more getting out there, being leaders, taking charge. And I'm really happy to see that with the younger generation.
Do any of them feel, or have any of them felt, that after the publication of your book, that they might be narrowed out or picked on or singled out for?
That's a good question. But my book, that's a great question. My book is published in English, so most of them aren't even reading it, because it's it's a Chinese. See, the thing is, a lot of them, the younger generation do speak English, but
Right.
a lot of them, they don't even know the book's out there. So unfortunately, I don't think it's really been that popular in China yet.
Okay. I was just wondering if maybe some government officials or pseudo-government officials or somebody got a hold of it and read it, and with these women, because I've never been to China.
Yeah.
I only know what I read and what I hear and all that kind of stuff, which is probably dangerous, but
That's why I felt the need to write my books.
Oh, that's glad. I'm glad you did, because it brings out the realness of the people.
That's the thing that really hit me was these stories. One of the 97-year-old woman, her story, all of these stories, I'm going to tell you, I cried at each one of these stories. I cried when I was writing this book because these stories are so touching. This book is not about me at all. It's about the strength and the courage and the conviction of these ladies, each
Wow.
lady that I selected. The 97-year-old, she was talking about how when she was a little girl, she used to go over and visit her cousin, and they would have fun running and jumping and playing games. And one day she went over, and her cousin couldn't come out and play with her anymore because she was getting her feet bind. They were binding her feet
Right.
so that she could be suitable for the proper man that they wanted to match her up with.
Right, yeah.
Because that's another big thing in China. They have the matchmaking is huge, where the families get together and they
Right.
decide who will get married. A lot of those marriages over in China are not marriages of love. Of course there are marriages of love, but there's a lot of matching them up. So here this 97-year-old lady was telling me the story, and as she was telling me the story, tears were running down her eyes because she was remembering her cousin, was running out, and then all of a sudden she couldn't walk.
No
She
more.
couldn't walk without assistance. So all these things that she loved doing were curtailed so that she could be matched up with a suitable
Well, I didn't
husband.
realize they were still doing foot bindings.
She was 97 years old, so that was back in those days.
Back in those days, 'cause they don't
When
still do that
when
today,
she
do
was
they?
a child. No, you don't see it today.
Oh,
no.
okay, I was gonna say,
Thank
wow.
God, thank God. But no,
Yeah.
she was remembering her cousin back when they used to do that. And you have to understand, she's 97 years old, but these customs, these were 40, 50 years ago. I mean,
Right.
China has changed. China is changing.
Right.
But before, it was very constricting. To be a woman in China was not easy. Another thing, too, that people don't realize is during the time of World War II, in Shanghai, 1 out of every 13 women were prostitutes.
Wow.
They had different levels, but the thing is 1 of every 13 women were prostitutes. Yet, here in France, where they have more prostitutes back in that time, 1 out of every 400. So you have 1 out of every 13 in
Wow.
Shanghai were prostitutes, and they had different levels. They had what they call the sing-song girls. They were the girls who, were the fancy, they go to all the nice nightclubs and all this, and they did the elite men. But then you had, walking all the way down, then you had the girls who just walked the street. These girls had no life. They had no future. And then the ones who did get married, the lucky ones who got married, many times they were abused. Domestic violence was rampant.
Yeah.
And what the husbands did is they would hit the women, but they would hit them in places that they wouldn't hit their face, or they wouldn't hit, but they would hit them in the body and things like that, where they could they could cover it up.
Right.
But still, it was abused. It was beating. So your choices as a woman were either to be a prostitute or to get married and be beat up by your husband. There were very few really happy. I'm sure there were, but I mean, when you look at that many people, and they had prostitution was all over China. These women had no prospect.
Wow.
So that's why I really commend the women that I found, and especially the younger women. They're doing something with their lives besides just being, relegated to a role.
Right.
And some of them are wives, some of them are, they have children and all of that. But besides all of that, they still have a dream. They're following their dream. They're making their dreams come true. And that's how I selected the 16 women that I did. They were all my personal friends.
Okay.
None of them some of them know each other, but most of them do not.
Are you still in touch with any of these women? Or
All the time.
All of them?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful that you can stay in touch
Oh,
with them.
yeah. I hear from them all the time. We're close. They always want to know what I'm doing, where I am. And so, yeah, I still have a close relationship with all of them.
I know you lived in China for a long time,
Mhm.
and you've got a lot of other goals now that you've rescheduled yourself.
And let me tell you something. China was not on my bucket list.
Okay.
I just ended up there. But I fell in love with it.
Now you have a reason to go back.
Yes, uh-huh.
So are you planning that in the distant future? I know it won't be soon, but
Maybe I have a lot of invitations, and I was telling you before we started talking that one of my good friends, he's my Chinese brother. He's he's one of the top contemporary artists in China, and he's developing this World Art Village for artists to come from all over the world.
Mhm.
I talk to him at least once a week because we're working on some projects that will partner some of my contacts, some artists that I know in New York and artists that I know in California, We're working on some things to partner, so that they can go over to China and they can work and create. So I keep in touch with a lot of my Chinese friends on a weekly basis, if not, more.
I wondered if you can, or you may already be doing this because you do this for a living, but staying in touch with, I know you stay in touch with these girls, with these women. I don't know whether girls or women, it's probably women.
Yeah.
And follow up with them, like write another book in 5 years about the same exact girls, women.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
The same exact women, what's happened to them in 5 years. One, the 97-year-old or whatever, may pass away in that time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would hope
But you could have what she's done up till then and her passing, and
Well, Mike, you're just going to have to help me with that book, because that's an interesting concept, because you're watching, because they told me what their dreams were, and then going back and then saying, now, did you achieve, or, with all of us, we all have dreams, but that's what is important. You want to have a dream, but it's not so much if that dream comes true, because many times it doesn't come true, but it leads to something else that's even greater. That's the thing about this book that I enjoy, that these ladies, how they got involved. They told the story of why they got involved with being a fashion designer, why they got involved with one of them. She's an opera singer. She went to Russia and studied classic opera, but she's Chinese, and she's doing this in Shanghai. I mean, and they all have these unique stories. It would be interesting to see. They express what their dreams were in my book. It'd be interesting to go 5 years from now and see, where they are now. That's an interesting concept.
and we can,
Maybe I'll have to go back to China and take you with me.
there you go. Oh, I'd love to go. I'd love to do that and come up with a set of questions.
We can collaborate.
There you go. But you could ask them every 6 months. What progress have you made on this dream you talked about, and follow up and document all that, and then at the end of 5 years, publish it out again.
One of the girl whose mother called her boy while she was being raised, her story's incredible. Her name's Kitty, and she's in the book. And she passed a test to be an art auctioneer. That's extremely difficult.
Wow.
I mean, there's only like a certain percentage, and she passed it on the first go. Some people have to take that test 5 or 6 times to get there. She passed it on the first go, and she's traveling all over China. Here she came from poverty. Her mother abandoned her because her mother wanted a boy, and so she just kind of gave her to the grandparents. So the grandparents raised her. She's from Chengdu, which is where all the pandas are from in China.
Right.
And she's now living this life that's just totally different from her upbringing, because she had that dream and she got her auctioneers, and she's traveling all over. She's selling these very expensive artwork, paintings, statues, everything. And her story is just so colorful and so impressive and inspiring. And she came from absolutely nothing.
Wow, just listening to you talk about the women, I would be interested to see what happens in 5 years.
I am too.
That would really intrigue me now, because I would have, what's going to happen to her?
You put the thought in my mind. I'm thinking about this too, because you're right.
Because it's, now you're going to expose these women worldwide to, they're going to have followers.
I hope so. They all are an inspiration.
Well, I can't see how it won't work like that.
I met a lot of people traveling, and China is a population of 1.4 billion. I was living in a city that had 13 to 14 million, and I was meeting a lot of people. I met a lot of women. I carefully selected these 16 ladies because they each have a unique story. And I picked it so they're all diverse, and I picked them for a reason, because if somebody reads this book and they see, maybe they'll resonate with Kitty, maybe they'll resonate with Fiona, maybe they'll resonate with one of the other girls. But the thing is, if it puts in their mind, if they have the feeling after reading my book that if she did it, I can do it.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to convey. And I took women from all different parts of China. I didn't take from just one area, because the diversity. Some of them were from Western China, some were from Southern China. They all had different upbringings. One of them came from a very privileged upbringing because her father was a very wealthy Chinese diplomat. She was educated in boarding schools in Europe, whereas another one was abandoned before she was even born. They all have their different stories.
Wow.
But they all are amazing ladies, and I just told them all, I said, you've got to be in my book. You've got to be in my book. And they all said, okay. Okay.
Well, I can't imagine other young girls worldwide I think all young people, men and boys and
totally
girls,
agree with you.
all have aspirations, all have goals.
Yes.
I want to do this or I want to do that. I'm part of what I would think about from your China people is the ones who weren't international,
Yes.
the girls, the women that you interviewed who
Right.
were
Never left China.
never left China.
Right.
What would they be aware of is even available worldwide to the ones who?
Very good. Very good observation. You're in your position for the right reason. The thing of it is, with a lot of them they don't have any idea that it's
Right.
different outside of China.
Right.
For many women, all they care about, and this is grilled into them, it's imprinted in them that they must marry a man with a house and a car.
Right.
So they actually have dating parks. I don't know if you've heard about this. They have dating parks in China where literally the men pay a very hefty fee, and they have to prove they have a job, they have to show their income, they have to show that they're titled to their house, titled to their car, all these different things. And that allows them to then go to these parks. They're all over China. Every Saturday they have dating parks.
Huh.
And these parents, they also spend a lot of money, and they make a poster. And they have a picture of their daughter, and they have all of her qualifications. You know, she graduated from this school, she does this, she does this. And it's the parents, not the girl who's sitting there, it's the parents. They have to meet, and then these men go through the dating park, they look at all the different signs, they see the one that they like, they talk to those parents, and if the parent, agrees that it's a match, they set up a coffee date for the two. So they go on a coffee date for the first impression. And then if they like each other, then they make another coffee date. And by the third coffee date, both sets of parents are there, and they're planning the wedding.
Wow.
I mean, that's so. Again, I mean, a lot of the women, all they know is what it's a very cultural country that it's been handed down. It's a 5,000-year-old country.
Right. Yeah.
So you've got traditions and customs. Matchmakers, when they go and they when they do get engaged and they do get married, they have to plan. They actually have wedding planners. They actually go through and make sure that the day is a good time. It's going to be a fortunate day, a lucky day.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to put together these dates and everything. It's very complicated. Wedding planners are making a fortune in China. They are making a fortune. And they spend millions of dollars on these weddings to get their daughter married.
I know there's a lot of big population over there, but if they're only allowing one child, those wedding planners might be out of work here in the next 50 years or so because they're
Well, believe me, 1.4 billion, even a small percent.
Yeah, it's a lot of children.
And they're
yeah.
growing. They're getting
Yeah.
married, and then weddings. Oh, and another thing too about weddings in China. I've been to several of them, and they're really. There's something else because they last all day long, and the brides have like 6 or 7 outfits that they're constantly changing.
Wow.
So they have their wedding dress, and then they change to another outfit, and they change to another outfit, and then they leave, then they come back, and they're wearing another outfit. So it's a big business over there.
Wow, and yet the women really don't have a big say in that.
They're following through the motions.
They're following through the motions. They're
Yes.
doing what they're instructed to do.
And
what they're
then
told
as soon
to
as
do.
they get married, they're supposed to have that one child. They're supposed to make their parents or grandparents.
I guess another question that would come to mind is the ones who are international, the ones who have traveled, lived
Yes.
abroad,
Yes.
know what's out there in the
Yes.
real,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the other
yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Are they still put through the same system of selecting husbands?
No.
They have a different system. So
They're more independent. The
so
ones who
it's-
have traveled are much more independent. For example, the lady who is the fashion designer who lives in Shanghai, who came from, her father was a famous diplomat.
Right.
She was educated in Switzerland. She graduated from King's College in London. She's much more independent. I mean, she's definitely an international woman. So, yes, I mean,
So
she's...
mom and dad are not going to set her up with a guy that she's going to have to marry.
No.
So it's a class system.
Yeah, it is.
So it's a class system
Yes.
that's very prevalent, very
Yes,
there, and
yes.
in reality is part of their life.
They don't
And
know any different.
They don't. Yeah. Well, you wouldn't.
That's all they know, and all their friends are the same way too. I think in a lot of ways, if you look at opposites, I think you could compare America and China to be exactly opposite, because both of them kind of live in bubbles.
Right.
Over 90% of Americans do not have passports.
Right.
Their
Okay.
idea of international travel is flying from New York to San Francisco. And the same thing in China. A lot of those people never leave China. Some of them never leave their hometown or their home area. So they never really, all they know about the world is what they see on TV or what they see on the internet.
Wow.
So it's a very, and the questions, they used to love, I used to do a lot of speeches for college universities.
Mhm.
They used to love to ask me all these questions because they wanted to know, what's about, they'd ask these questions because they'd watch movies or they'd see TV programs. And so they'd ask me all these questions to see how, does this happen, does that happen? They all think that Americans are all rich.
Right.
Because they watch these American movies and they think everybody's living in a mansion and a palace and
But all those girls go, and I presume there's a lot of girls going to college.
Oh yeah, they go to college to meet a man. The parents push these girls. The girls. This is another reason I wrote this book, is because the highest suicide rate in America. In China, is like the 18 to 25 year, because they can't get married too soon. They all have to get into a good college so they can make the right, suitable husband.
Right.
And they're going to meet him at a good college. So they were really going to college. A lot of them go for their education, yes, but for a lot of them, they go there to find their husband. So they're looking for that match that they're going to meet at the right university. So this is a thing that's happening.
Well, I guess as a college student, an old college student, I would wonder what would be taught in these colleges that would not make the young women aware of what's really out there in the real world, and have them still accept the class they're in, and they have to have a husband pick for them.
Well, some of the there's a lot of them now pick their own husbands, but the
Right.
parents are the thing of it is after a woman turns 25 to 27 are prime years you're supposed to get married. 24 to 27.
Okay.
And then once you turn 27, you are really panicking. From 27 to 30, you've got to find a husband. Because
Wow.
if you turn 30 and you're not married, you are put out to pasture. And that's exactly what they think. And I happen to, there are many women who commit suicide.
Wow.
Because they can't, it's all about saving face. They don't
Yeah.
want to lose face. So it's sad, and that's another reason why I wanted to write this book. I wanted to let women know, there's more to life. Follow your dreams, and these are examples. I could have written a book about American women, but that would not resonate with China. I selected 16 women in China so they could see these are their own. And then I could tell the story of where they came from, what was it that motivated them, inspired them while they were growing up, what were the influences that allowed them to become who they are now. And I wanted to show it to these Chinese girls to say, you can be more, you can be more.
Right. Do you think it'll ever get published in Chinese so that they can read it?
I would love for that to happen. I would love for that to happen, because I would love it so that they could read it on their own terms. Because my first book, my first book that I ever wrote, and by the way, I want to say I'm an example of these dreams that come true, because I have never taken a writing course in my life. I did not study journalism. This was not my goal to become a writer or become an author. It just happened. But the thing, it was my dream, and I made my dream come true. But my first book I ever had published, I couldn't even read it. My own book I could not read because my first book was published in Chinese.
Wow. Well, we've got about a minute left
Okay.
On this show, and we're going to come back and do another show, everybody, so stay tuned. If you'd like to put in some closing comment about what you're doing, and whatever you want to say for the next 35, 40 seconds.
Well, I want to say that I've really enjoyed my time here in Portage and Kalamazoo. It's a very wonderful, I'm more surprised than I expected from everything that it has to offer. I love the people. And I am now I wasn't going to write any more books, because I have written 7 books, 5 have been published, and I said, okay, that's it. But now I'm going to write a book about my time here in Portage and Kalamazoo, and I think it's going to be inspirational as well. So I've really enjoyed my time here. It's a wonderful, wonderful area.
All right, well, with that, I'd like to thank Debra for being on our show. And we're going to be back and do another show on, I'm not sure what topic. She's going to surprise me. So I'm ready to be caught off guard. With that, I'd like to say thank you, everyone, for watching. And please stand by for the next show.
Thank you.
It's been my pleasure.